Little Primer is back-to-back conversations with someone passionate about their work and passionate about someone else's work. Mostly art and mostly Atlanta. I'm your host, Sean Mills. So today we're talking with Roxanne and Ashley. Roxanne is a art specialist and Ashley is a assistant library senior at the Sewell Cultural Arts Center. And they recently put on a big debut called Minicon. And we're going to be talking about that, but first of all, I'm going to ask you individually, Roxanne, what was your experience with Minicon, like in a general sense?
Well, I mean, it was our first experience working with the libraries. I came from a center that was strictly with cultural affairs and the arts. Working with the library was pretty organic, so it made our experience a lot easier. If people want to do this in the future, you just really have to find good partners. So, in general, I would say just because of our relationship and how well we got to know each other in this process, it made our event stronger, I think. So that's how I feel.
And so I think to try to give people a picture of this place, it's kind of a unique thing. It's located near like schools and parks. It has a fully like developed library system that's very cool, and it's all these brand new facilities. And so right now we're actually in your recording studios. So can you talk about it from like the library side, like how like this new cultural center and how everything's going with the gallery and everything? Can you describe the space from your perspective, Ashley?
So the creative studios, like you said, we have a recording studio. We have 3 soundproof practice rooms. We call them practice rooms, but people can use them for lots of different purposes. We also have a video studio. This concept is definitely new to Cobb County, to the library system. We're not the only one of its kind in the United States, but we are, I think, the only facility like this that's partnered with cultural affairs and parks, definitely in the state of Georgia. So that definitely makes our facility unique, and having the gallery space and the Black Box Theater really adds to the whole feeling of the building, and working with park staff, it's been really great.
Yeah, and so I would also add on to that these are the types of facilities that people pay a lot for in Atlanta, but it's a unique thing in Cobb that everyone's getting it for free, essentially, with their library card.
Mm-hmm. If you have a library card, you can use the studio space for free, and it is, like you said, people are paying a lot of money in Atlanta. We have several people who are regulars who come in and use the studios that live outside of Cobb County. All you have to do is pay $40 for an out-of-county card. That's way cheaper than it is to rent a recording studio.
Yeah, because we do have pretty high-end equipment and a lot of editing programs, software.
Pro Tools and Reason.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, for,
Yeah.
like everything creative, basically, is going to be found in our facility.
Yeah, and I think talking to staff, a recurring theme can be when people do find out about you, they might say, wow, I didn't know this was here. I didn't know I could do all this stuff. So I think of the Minicon event as kind of a big debut. It's like it was the Sewell Cultural Arts Center's big coming out party to show what we have and get people looking around at the different parts. So in terms of programming, is that what you guys thought of it? Was it like, have you, other events were kind of in this vein? Do you have a reaction to that?
So my perspective, I've been wanting to do an event like this for a long time. Ever since I started working for the libraries, I had talked to one of my previous managers, came from Texas, and he did something very similar. It was more anime related and less comics related, but he had something he had done, and I had been trying to get my managers at my previous library to let me do this forever, and it just never worked out. But I did do a cosplay event, and it was really successful. So then when I came on board at Sewell Mill, and James, our former facility manager, I kind of got talking to him about it, and we had a meeting with Parks and I found out that Roxanne had a love of pop culture and comics and anime and everything, just like me. And so it was definitely, like you said, it was really organic, coming together.
For me, so Parks wasn't staffed in this facility until a month after the library was. So we came in and definitely felt like very new kid because they were established, and then got to introduced to everybody. And my goal is always to provide services or events to the public, just so everyone gets that kind of outreach. It's kind of a passion of mine, just to make sure that everyone kind of gets educated on all sorts of different things. Where it's I don't know much about sports, but the arts obviously. And, you know, pop culture and stuff like that is just inherently going to find its place in the arts and history and stuff. But for me, I got interested in wanting to start an event and then just go through all the planning and, you know, start to finish. Was a huge goal of mine as turning into like a full-timer with cultural affairs. They just kind of asked me to jump in on a meeting, and then I just ended up really loving the idea of it, because a lot of places that we work at can't even facilitate it. Mm-hmm. The space that we have makes it so that it's possible, because we used every single inch of this facility to do it, whereas other buildings wouldn't be able to accommodate that kind of programming. So that to me was something that was so brand new to my brain, mm-hmm. because I've never had at it, like, it just never could have happened anywhere else.
Yeah, so we started off by kind of explaining the Cultural Arts Center. Now I kind of want to paint a picture of people who were lucky enough to be there, all the cool stuff that was at Minicon. So in a general sense, there were food vendors, there were 2 food trucks, there was an artist alley, there was artist that was working for DC, there was panel discussions, there was face painting, there was a group, Maker Station, doing 3D printing. Did I leave out anything particular, and did you want to call up some individuals?
Yeah, we had a cosplay contest, we had several workshops that were hands-on, so a lot of people got to learn about digital inking, they got to learn about making costumes and miniature paintings, mm-hmm. as well as
Gigabytes Cafe. They were a really great partner. They did demos.
Tabletop gaming, interactive tabletop gaming. We wanted to hit every age, because this is a facility that caters to all of those. So we wanted something that kids could enjoy. I mean, they go nuts for painting, like mm-hmm. Face painting and stuff. And then we wanted to and cosplay, and introduction to cosplay in a very safe way, because a lot of people can't make it to Dragon Con like that. And then adults would really like things like the 3D printing, as well as the miniature paintings and stuff like that. So you did hit on almost 90% of it.
Okay. Well, so cons, short for conventions, they've kind of evolved over the years. I think they started off mostly like business conventions, and I think they actually had a more specific purpose in the pre-internet era, because you'd have to actually physically meet like salesmen and vendors for like professional fields. Mm-hmm. Now they've sort of transitioned to be more about fandoms and stuff. So Ashley, I was going to ask you, have you been to many conventions? Have you had a history with conventions in the past?
I've been to the fandom, Dragon Con, MomoCon, like the Atlanta Comic Convention they do a couple of times a year, things like that. It's all fandom related that I've gone to.
Yeah, and to sort of...
Book conventions. I go to book conventions a lot.
Do you end up meeting authors? Do you buy books? What are your main goals?
Yes. My big thing is I like to meet the authors and talk to them. So that's my... I go with a group of friends that some of them are not so interested. I'll stand in line for hours, and they're like, I want to go sit and watch them at a panel. I want to stand in line and talk to the people around me. I made a lot of new friends at this one convention I went to last year, just standing in line for 2 hours to get an author's autograph.
How about you, Roxanne? Have you ever been to any conventions as a fan?
Dragon Con. I mean, that's really the only one. I grew up in a very small town, so me even being in Atlanta, I'm just slowly... I've been here for 12 years, but I'm just slowly creeping into that city. And Dragon Con, I started only 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. But
it's the best.
It is but a lot of people will argue that because it's so big now. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Even 2 years ago, though, it was so much. I'll be one of those people, and I just started going recently too.
Yeah.
But the first year I went compared to even last year, I think it's been 3 or 4 years since the first time I went, so I haven't been going for very long, but complete difference in just 2 or 3 years, the amount of people.
Yeah. But I'll go to festivals and stuff. I've been to several festivals, which is totally different, a different topic, but...
Rinfest?
But also still... Nope.
But
also still a thing, you know?
Certainly an overlap with festivals,
Yeah.
And so, to continue unpacking... From my perspective in history, conventions were kind of they were from vendors to customers. So that in the past, that would be if you were a book convention, that the big thing is that it's providing a resource for the customers, that they get access to authors they wouldn't normally get to meet. But now I think there's a transition where, at least from my experience at Minicon, I saw children walking around and they were excited to see the other participants. So specifically wearing costumes and getting to meet like-minded people and getting to meet people that have the same specific fandoms, like whatever that may be. So did you see that at Minicon? Did you have that experience?
I think so.
Yeah, I think like we didn't expect such a turnout for the cosplay. I don't know, for all the attendance really cosplaying that day. I thought it was really cool that since we did cater it to families, that everybody was really accepting of just like, oh yeah, anyone can take a photo of me. No one's going to be snobby about it. This is like just a really cool way for kids to, you know, enjoy some of, especially since the blow up of Marvel and DC in the past like decade. All these little kids have now just grown up completely with those films, and so they immediately recognize those characters. Whereas, like, I mean, I didn't. You would have to kind of be essentially nerdy to know all these. Like, there weren't those huge blockbusters as they do now. So, I think the kids being able to dress up like and just immediately know these characters like they're Mickey Mouse was really special. And a lot of the like larger cons won't have all the babies.
Yeah, it was really
recognizing
cool.
It. Yeah,
seeing the kids, like we had, you know, the person dressed up as Batman, and the
kids
that Batman seeing the
was
Batman.
Like, oh God,
he was really good, and the Sailor Moon characters. Though I don't think a lot of the kids knew who Sailor Moon was. They still thought their costumes were cool. Yeah. Or Woody. We had Thorindor cosplay who dressed up as Woody, and all the kids want to take pictures with him, and that to me is the best part.
But a lot of the cosplayers were parents for the kids, like so. That to me was even more special. It was like they almost thought about their characters because they knew the kids would get excited.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting too that once again pointing to how cons have evolved. It used to be that you really cared about Star Trek, say, and that drove you to find other people that you could kind of put a con together for that. Now there's a kind of a new thing where people are almost like interested in having cons, like being con runners. So I think that's kind of interesting that, like, for instance, like even with this space, there was the idea that, well, we do want to have a big event for the public, and there may even be wiggle room of what exactly the focus would be. So do you have any reactions to that?
I just wanted to do something.
Yeah, I want to put something together. Cool. I will say that I have. You don't have to keep this in here.
Sure.
So I have a podcast that I host that is a book podcast, and we talk about young adult lit, and that's my passion. And my goal is to, in Minicon, help me learn, like planning Minicon and working with Roxanne, help me to see what is needed. My goal is to create a young adult lit festival in Marietta. Because we have Decatur Book Fest, but we don't have anything really in Marietta, and we don't have anything young adult centered here. So I'm like, okay, now I know it's going to be a lot more work than I thought it was going to be, and I'm going to need this, this, and this. And so this Minicon experience has helped me to figure that out. And
yeah, I mean, I've always just wanted to develop my skills as a project manager. So for me, it just so happened to be something I was super interested in, and it really helped having something that was a topic that I naturally gravitate towards. Whereas, like, I probably could have learned these skills, but, probably not as organically. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I just really wanted to do something more with my skill set, I guess.
Well, I want to put you at ease to say that I like that cross-pollination. I hope you'd make that convention. I'd go there. I'd like to be a part of it if I could. I overheard you earlier. You were talking about how there's a recent film out, The Darkest Minds, and I saw that. And Did you
read the book?
Yeah, and so I think that would be just that, and the idea of like the violence of translation from book to film is an interesting thing to talk about. So the other thing that I'm kind of getting at from the con side is to say that there is a dark part to this where people kind of think of them as money makers. They might even think of them like kind of legacy building, like I get to be important by having a con. There's a recent kind of rash of this happening because there was this history of the Comic-Con, and then that was so successful, and it kind of spun off to the Penny Arcade PAX Con that got so big, and it was built out of their specific fandom. And then people were like, oh, I could do mine. And so it proliferated a lot of smaller kind of like maybe Twitch people and rappers and that kind of thing trying to make their own conventions. And then they hit this wall where they're really good at being performers, they're really good at being entertainers, but the project management stuff that you're talking about, Roxanne, that's a whole new skill set they may have had zero experience with, zero overlap to being a creative, quote unquote. So could you speak to that, the difference of trying to, you know, if you want to have a creative thing, you have to have someone that's doing all the pencil work.
So, and I think about, so a lot of things I think overlap for me is being an artist, but also having administrative skills. So not every artist, especially studio artists, aren't going to naturally be able to manage their stuff. A lot of people fail as studio artists because they don't know how to promote, market themselves, be able to keep with deadlines and stuff like that. It's the same way with entertainment. It's the same way with any kind of creative person, where you don't always have that brain that you're going to organize and follow up and do all of that admin side. So whenever you get creative people who just want to start a con just because it's a great idea, they can't follow through. And I mean, not to say that like I'm somewhat special or something about it, but I think you have to go in thinking about a con as it is a business. Like, you can't just be like, well, I have great ideas. It's not enough to have a great idea. And you have to surround yourself with a team that's going to support you, because there's a lot of times where you have to talk to your village. Whereas a lot of artists or creative people, they kind of like, they work by themselves most of the time, and there's a lot of ego there too. You see with a lot of people where their idea is the best idea, period, point blank, not talking to anybody about it. I'm the most important person in the room, and you're like, nope. I mean, there's some things where I'm like, that is a wonderful idea. You get full credit for that. But then also, that is not a big picture thing. A lot of people like just hold themselves up in details where you need to look past that, where it's very hard. It's very hard for people to look past just their ideas and work with other people. Creative people are like that. And I mean, those are difficult things that come with starting cons.
Sure. And I think, too, there could be a big difference between what you think might be the problem space and what actually comes up. And not just solving things, but then coming up with adjustments when things are kind of working, but you still have to find the logistics. So, for instance, Ashley, I was wondering for you, what were amongst like the facilities and all the programming and all the different parts of this, what were the kind of things that jumped out at you as something that fires you had to specifically put out for this event?
I was the one who dealt with the vendors.
Okay.
For the most part, vendors and artists.
I sent the emails.
Okay.
So we pick up on each other's strengths. Whereas when I follow up with an email, it's like I really stick to the business of it, and it's nothing's ever personal. And a lot of people get butthurt about decisions we make or something like that, because it's not so-and-so con. It's Minicon. It's a very generalizing, but like there are a lot of people who think that this is about them. That's the difficulties with dealing with this stuff. There are certain people that are just going to be mad for the sake of being mad, and managing that was our biggest struggle, because it's just like, that's cool, you had a bad day, leave that at home, you know. So you can't say that, but you just have to. You have to be the positive one in a professional setting, and you're the host. You always have to take the high road.
Sure.
If you don't, then you're screwed.
I don't feel like we really had that many. There were maybe like one or two little fires that we had to put out that day, but otherwise, everyone was really happy. Everyone was easy to work with for the most part.
I think everyone understood and had perspective for the most part.
So let me kind of rephrase where I was going with that. I can no, you're fine. Ashley, so what was the majority of your workload? say? Even when it went smoothly for Minicon, was it mostly day of for you? Was it how would you describe
actually, it ran itself the day of for the most part.
Yeah, for the day of. So we're both planners, and kind of the rest. I don't want to say the rest of our team is not planners. The other people that kind of helped out with us, but we were the ones that kept everybody.
We were the obsessive ones.
Yeah,
for sure.
on point. And basically, our life for at least the month beforehand, if not longer, was Minicon all day, every day, and lots of stress and so like
I think it was worry.
Yeah. But from the beginning, Roxanne and I, we got all the promotional materials together. We spent a whole day doing outreach. We drove all around the metro, kind of Atlanta, Marietta area to comic book stores, gaming stores. We walked the square and gave flyers to anyone who would take them. We spent a whole day just outreaching and trying to find people interested in being vendors. A lot of other people that were part of the group had specific contacts that we would love to have. So we let them take care of that for the most part. If there was stuff that, because I do consider us control freaks, if there was stuff that we just literally didn't have enough time for in the day and we had to delegate, which is forced delegation, then we would give it to other people. But really, we sat down, came up with the schedule for the day. We kind of worked on where to place people. We really worked hand in hand on everything.
It really was.
And then the day of, it was kind of like, okay, well, we need one person who can stay one person who's going to be by the panel room all day, and then one person who is going to be up front. And
it really was scheduling staff.
It was scheduling staff, and we had a couple of volunteers that I kind of took charge of.
Well, they're volunteers.
Yeah.
Well,
keeping in track.
I'd like to give you some credit even where you're not giving yourselves credit to say that I think a lot of what made it go so smoothly is that you put a lot of labor into the research. So for instance, from my experience as a participant, I noticed that in terms of like you had a cosplay event and you had cosplay judges, and I think you did a great job of doing the research of finding who would be a good fit. So you had some really great performers in your panels, and you had people that they were willing to participate and take pictures with people, and so I think that's another kind of unseen type of labor, was just having a good eye in the research of like who would be a good fit. So you put out the fire before it started. Now, another kind of interesting twist for this Minicon is the fact that you guys have the facility set. So for many conventions, that's the biggest material issue, is that like, how are we going to pay for this place? How are we going to get insurance? How are we going to make sure that, we've never, physically loaded into this site before, but you had that kind of in the bag.
Like an inherent public space.
Yeah.
We were out there with tape measures, measuring the gallery space so we could see how many tables. And then, like the week before, did a run through of setting tables up, and I was like, okay, what I measured is not going to work. Let me redo the map.
Yeah.
And then the day of, I had to switch people around at the last minute because they had more set up. And it's just all, we were prepared. We stayed late the night before to make sure everything was together so that the next morning, if something came up, we were ready to just to fix it right then.
But having the facility, that was really cool.
It was very made it easier.
Like, one of the perks of, I guess, being a public servant is like having the venue. I couldn't imagine dealing with like not being here every single day and just like if I needed to remeasure something, not being able to recheck it. Like I'm not just about to walk into the West End and just like, cool, I just have a tape measure, just walking in. Yeah. Like I couldn't have done something like that where trust other people to give me the measurements, or not being in the physical space to picture it, because we would just walk out in the middle of the entire gallery and just be like, picture it in my head and figure it out.
And that comes back to also us being control freaks.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't be like, call the Westin up, hey, how many tables can I fit in here? No, we'd have to
I'm
go.
I'm going to physically put a table in that space and see how it looks. Yeah. So...
Yeah, another type of credit I want to give you guys, something that was very clever, I think, was that how you specifically, Roxanne, dealt with the vendors. So there's lots of ways that could have gone.
Yeah.
And if I could kind of describe it, you settled on 2 food trucks, and that way you didn't have so much competition that they wouldn't be happy with the sales they made. And then you also had a small compliment, the King of Pops. ice pops, so that you kind of had like a good balance of options, but it wasn't like overwhelming.
And that was actually, and I'll give credit where credit's due, is we just so happened to work with Tom and She before. I knew that Tom and I'm just going to name drop because they're great people to work with. They've worked with the county as well as the different cities in the area. So I knew that they would be good to do outreach to because they have, experience working with us. So we talked to them, and she actually, I forget her name and I'm sorry, but she told us like, hey, just so you know, here's some tips I have, which is really like where she said most trucks have minimums. Most places will only have a certain amount of trucks just so it's not too competitive. You should have, like 2 savories and 1 dessert, something like that. So really she gave us like really great guidelines. And I mean, that goes back to having like great teamwork, great rapport with other people, and just relationship building. It's just like they will give you that kind of feedback if you just ask. And a lot of people are too scared to ask, and I just ask questions about everything to everyone. And if they tell me no or they don't want to tell me, I'm just like, okay, I'll move on and find somebody else. But Tom and She really helped us with that.
And Good Foods, and really. Jenny, the owner of Good Food across the street, she's great, and we want to give her the opportunity to come over here anytime she can, because her food's great, and she's just so easy to work with.
But also we use community resources like that farmer's market. I mean, that like a lot of people commented on how unique that was and how it was cool that they could just grab vegetables. It's a really weird thing to have at a con. But it worked. But it works.
People,
I mean, you just kind of throw some weird stuff out there, and it's just, if it works, then we'll bring it back next year. If it doesn't, then we'll move on.
Yeah. And the one thing I think we haven't name-checked yet was the awesome music. So you had a band playing like They Might Be Giants covers. Did you get a chance to hear any of that concert?
That was Timothy or is it Tim? Does he like to go by Tim?
He goes by Timothy Exits, his stage name.
Yeah.
The Private Pageant is his band, but it was just himself and his drummer, whose name I forgot.
Sorry.
Sorry.
But
I can put in the show notes, don't worry.
Yeah.
Timothy is great. They actually played at the very first concert we had here back in January.
That's right when I started here.
And with the Buckhead Boys, which is a hip-hop group. So it was really interesting. It was a really cool concert. And Tim's been great about, anytime we need help with anything, he'll play.
Which is, I don't know if other cons get this. A lot, I mean, I think maybe a lot do, but a lot of people come out to support us because they like what we do. Since we are a library, since everything, all of the sales from the vendors, all of their sales, they donated 5% of it to Cobb Library Foundation. So it wasn't just us trying to have money, it was us doing fundraising.
And we didn't charge anyone.
Yeah.
The only thing people had to pay for was if they wanted to buy something from vendors or buy food.
Yeah.
That was it.
So a lot of people really supported us in that way, knowing that this is really just a community event. And, a lot of other places, how much is a badge to Dragon Con? I don't remember.
It's really expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of families can't afford to go. I mean, even if you have a young child and you're
it's not worth buying
it's not worth it because they're not going to get the experience out of it. So, for something, that's what we really wanted, was to bring this to people who can't afford to go to the big conventions.
On the other side, though, it is difficult to not have a budget.
Yeah.
And a lot of people expect a lot of stuff, and you're like, zero budget, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, none. So a lot of stuff came out of pocket. But, we're going to try to reuse things and stuff like that. But
we also had,
difficult.
I forgot, we need to mention MomoCon and AWA Anime Weekend Atlanta, both conventions. I emailed them 3 weeks beforehand because I honestly had it written down months ahead of time to email them and be like, hey, can you come out? I forgot. And then 3 weeks ahead of time, I'm like, let me just shoot these emails, see if they'll come. And both of them within a day responded and were like, yes, we'll come. Yes, we'll bring giveaways. And then MomoCon was like, you're having a cosplay contest, we'll bring prizes for you. So they gave away 4 passes to MomoCon for next year.
For the entire weekend.
For the weekend, yeah. And it was amazing. I mean,
I
did not expect that, and it was great.
Yeah, so if I can kind of recover some of the things we were dropping. No, that's what you're supposed to do. But I just meant to say that you have the success of Minicon mainly because of the past success of all the other things you've done, so that you already had this public that was like, they trusted you that it'd be worth coming out, right? So I think like that's another kind of unseen part of all this, is that you put the work in every day by having a lovely library and everything else, so that they want to come to the facility. Now, as we kind of like wrap up some of this stuff, I think you could track the specific evolution of Minicon to say that there were the San Diego Comic-Cons, then we had an Atlanta Comic-Con, which is similar, like it's doing a branch-off thing, and then this is our kind of local miniature version of that. So having gone through that evolution and then having had this past Minicon, what were the things that you realized that like, oh, next year if we do this again, or if we were to do this again, what would I do different? What would I want to grow? What would I want to change?
Oh God,
We're definitely doing it again next year.
Yes.
This is going to be an annual event.
Yes, we definitely want to do it again next year. A lot of stuff that I was picking up on like the day of was just kind of getting better volunteers. So, just really organization for the day of is trying to place people before that, trying to give as much notice as possible to those people. Because whenever you're working with volunteers, you don't even really know who's going to show up. But I think next time is really going to be a hired staff member, maybe borrowed from a different facility, like a sister facility or branch, that we're going to have do that. Because when you're just relying on like a 15-year-old or whatever they are to do all the, counting everybody who's walking in, no offense to that 15-year-old, but goodness, no. Never again.
And starting it early, we talked about maybe starting it earlier in the day.
And we wouldn't have known that unless we did this. So
Yeah.
we just followed our regular hours for Saturday, which was 1 to 6. But, seeing how everything was pretty popular, how there were kind of waves and stuff, we would love to extend the hours. We'd love to just make it earlier or something.
And so we can do more panels early in the day.
So especially because we did have a lot of stuff scrunched in, maybe we can give some breathing room to the people who are on the panel who also want to man their own vendor station or vendor area and stuff like that. Like, it kind of gives, I don't know, something that a vendor would want to do, like follow up with, because there was some of that this year where it's like, oh, well, I was gone for like 2 hours from my booth and I missed those sales. And I'm like, sorry. I mean, I could have asked somebody else to do a panel, but you said it was no problem.
Yeah. That was the problem. Like, the biggest thing is a couple of them, they signed on to do like a workshop, a panel, and this and that. And so they weren't at their table for very long. But
so really it's like,
managing
don't believe
that.
them. Don't believe them. Like,
it's a learning experience for the vendors too, right?
Yeah. And to kind of protect people in the future, it's like, I know you want to do it all, but like even I can't. And it's fine though, because we didn't even know so many people would want to be part of it. So we were kind of scrambling, oh, well, if you say you can do it, like, let's go ahead and just tell you can do it. And the more people that signed on, we didn't ask them to do stuff. Like, a lot of people who came later in the planning process, like, weren't even asked to do those things because we were just worried about filling those panels and workshops and stuff like that. So now we kind of have an idea of numbers and interests and stuff. We're just kind of, you wouldn't know until you have the first one.
You mentioned extending hours. Did that go as far as to extending to another day, you think, in the future?
I would say in the future, not the next.
Not next year.
Not the next time.
But maybe starting it at 10 or 11 in the morning instead of 1 o'clock in the afternoon would be...
Yeah, because those artists really moved in quick. Like, for the vendor area.
We gave them like a 2.5 hour gap where they could come in. We could probably just be like, you have an hour, and they, instead of them being so staggered, if we give them a specific time, they'll get in. Yeah.
Well, so can you tell for me, like, as like maybe a final kind of like epitaph on this, what was like the moment or experience you had with Minicon that you felt like was your favorite, that kind of felt like this, it was worth it because of this?
I think it was just people coming up to me and saying that this ran better than established cons.
Yeah.
Like, that to me, like, I could have cried.
We had a vendor, she was like, so Atlanta, they just started, they've got MomoCon and then the one that just started, was it Atlanta Comic, something that had happened a few weeks before ours, and one of our vendors was like, this was better organized than that.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest
That's the biggest compliment, for sure.
She was like, that was not a great experience. That convention was not a great experience for me, but this is so much better.
Yeah, because I want patrons and people to be happy, but I also want our partners to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're just as important, and I want people to feel like they can trust their needs in us. And that to me was so special. And I think she probably didn't even realize that she made my day.
And little kids coming up to us. I was like, I'm just in a jumpsuit and a wig. And they're like, can we get your picture? And I'm like,
not very many people asked me, though. Like, I had Sean ask me for a picture. I had literally one other person ask me. And then a little boy who adopted me, like, as his mom.
Yes.
But, like,
yes.
that's it.
Yeah.
Like, but nobody really
fun.
asked for pictures. He just wanted me to read to him because I was wearing all pink. He didn't ask for any pictures. He didn't care. He was just like, oh, she looks fun. She looks like bubble gum. And that was it. Like, nobody cared for my photo. Which I don't care. It's weird.
No, well, thanks so much for sharing your experiences with me. And I was wondering, could you tell me maybe where you'd like to direct people if they want to learn more, like whether it be your Facebook page or other social media?
Yeah, 100% our Facebook or Instagram. So our Facebook is Sewell Mill Cobb, and our Instagram is Sewell Mill. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Find more information at doubleprimer.com.